Let me tell you about the afternoon a 10-year-old boy heard something he shouldn't have and made a choice that would unravel everything. Antonino Gallo didn't look like much that Thursday at Cafe Belladonna. Just another kid doing homework, bored in a fancy tea room while his aunt sipped chamomile and chatted with friends. Gold mirrors, velvet chairs, the tinkling of expensive china. This wasn't his world. He was just visiting. But here's the thing about Antonino. He'd been training for this moment his entire life without knowing it. See, his father Matteo had disappeared when Antonino was 5, vanished like smoke, leaving behind whispers and debts and a reputation that made people look away when they saw the Gallo name. His mother said Papa abandoned them. His aunt said Papa made bad choices. But Antonino remembered differently. He remembered late nights when Papa taught him Sicilian dialects, made games out of listening, turned every conversation into a puzzle to decode. The world speaks in layers, Papa would say. Most people only hear the surface. You need to hear what's underneath. So Antonino listened. And that Thursday, sitting 3 feet from 2 well-dressed men in tailored suits, he heard everything underneath. Add it to the Earl Grey. Gorshkov drinks it slow. Let him choke on the last sip of his rain. Antonino's blood turned to ice water. Poison, murder, Roland Gorshkov. The most feared man in southern Italy was sitting in this tea room about to drink death from a porcelain cup. Real quick, where are you watching from? I love knowing where our community is spread across the world. Drop your city below, and if you're new, subscribe now. This story is about to take a turn you won't believe. Let's continue. Now, I want you to imagine being 10 years old in this moment. You know something terrible is about to happen. You have maybe 60 seconds to decide. Do you stay quiet? Do you risk everything? Do you trust that a stranger's life is worth more than your own safety? Antonino watched the waiter place the steaming cup in front of Roland Gorshkov. He felt his father's voice inside him. Courage isn't something you have. It's something you choose every single time. The choice was his, and in 3 seconds, Antonino Gallo stopped being invisible. But to understand why this moment mattered, why Antonino ran instead of froze, why the name Gallo made Roland Gorshkov's face go pale, why this single act of courage would ignite a war, you need to go back. Back to before the poison, before the tea room. Back to the night 5 years ago when Antonino's father whispered goodbye and walked into the darkness, leaving behind a legacy written in blood, loyalty, and secrets that would take a decade to unravel. The back room of Cafe Belladonna smelled like leather and old cigars. Antonino sat rigid in a chair meant for adults, his feet dangling 6 inches from the floor. Roland Gorshkov stood by the window, silent as a predator, watching the street below with eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by poison. Aunt Penelope had been escorted to a different room, gently but firmly. This conversation was not for her. "Look at me," Roland said quietly. Antonino's head snapped up, his heart still hammered from the chaos. The shattered teacup, the gasps, the guns that had appeared like magic in the hands of Roland's men. Roland studied him with an intensity that made Antonino feel transparent. You didn't hesitate. Most grown men would have frozen, calculated the risk, saved themselves. He moved closer, crouching to eye level. But you ran toward danger. That's not luck. That's training. "I'm not trained in anything," Antonino whispered. I heard them and Who taught you Sicilian?" The question landed like a blade. Antonino's throat tightened. "My papa, Matteo." Roland's voice cracked on the name. He closed his eyes briefly, something like grief washing over his hard features. When he opened them, they were wet. "Your father saved my life 8 years ago, took a bullet meant for my chest in a warehouse ambush. I carried him out myself, swore a blood oath I'd protect his family forever." Antonino's world tilted. But he left us. He didn't leave." Roland's words were steel wrapped in sorrow. He was accused of betraying the families. False charges, planted evidence. Someone wanted him erased. He disappeared before they could execute him. I searched for 2 years. Found nothing. He paused, jaw tight. "I thought he was dead. I've been sending money to your mother anonymously ever since. Penance for failing him." The room spun. Papa didn't abandon them. Papa was hunted. "The men you overheard today," Roland continued, "they're connected to the same faction that framed your father. Old vendettas. The Gallo bloodline represents something they can't control. Loyalty that can't be bought." "I don't want to be part of this," Antonino said, voice breaking. "I just want—" "You already are." Roland stood, turned back to the window. "The moment you understood their words, you became part of it." Outside, a dark sedan rolled to a stop across the street. One of Roland's men burst through the door, envelope in hand, face pale. Roland tore it open. Red. His expression turned to stone. He showed Antonino the message, typed anonymous, brutal. The Gallo boy should have stayed dead with the father. Antonino's breath stopped. Roland's hand settled on his shoulder, heavy, protective, final. "They know who you are now," he said softly. "And they're coming." Chapter 3. The night raid. Roland's escort drove them home in silence. 2 stone-faced men in a black Mercedes, eyes constantly scanning mirrors. Aunt Penelope sat rigid beside Antonino, her hand crushing his. She hadn't spoken since Roland explained the threat. Now, standing outside their modest apartment building, she finally found her voice. "We'll be fine here," she told Roland's men. Her chin lifted with the stubborn pride of someone who'd survived worse than threats. "This is our home." Mr. Gorshkov insisted. I don't care what he insisted. Her voice was iron wrapped in exhaustion. "We're not running to some hotel like criminals. We stay here." The men exchanged glances but didn't argue. They positioned themselves outside, one at the building entrance, one watching the alley. Inside, Antonino couldn't eat the pasta Penelope reheated. He pushed it around his plate, watching shadows dance on the walls, hearing Roland's words echo. "They're coming. Go to bed, Tesoro," Penelope whispered, kissing his forehead. "Everything will look better in the morning." But morning never came. Antonino woke to the sound of splintering wood. His door exploded inward, masked figures in black, moving like smoke and violence. Before he could scream, hands grabbed him, yanked him from bed. "No!" Aunt Penelope's shriek tore through the apartment. Antonino twisted, saw her fighting in the hallway, clawing at another masked man. "Run! Antonino, run!" He couldn't run. Iron grips pinned his arms. "Finish the Gallo bloodline," a voice hissed, cold and final. Rage flooded through fear. Antonino lunged forward and bit down, teeth sinking into the hand covering his mouth. Tasted blood. Heard a grunt of pain. A fist crashed into his temple. Stars exploded. "Little bastard." Something rough scraped over his head. Burlap, darkness, suffocating. He thrashed, kicked, fought like his father must have fought, like every Gallo before him. It wasn't enough. He was lifted, carried, the world a jumble of shouts, and Penelope screaming and his own heartbeat roaring in his ears. Cold night air hit him. Then he was falling, thrown into emptiness. He hit metal, a van floor, bodies piled in around him. Penelope's muffled sobbing somewhere close. The engine roared to life, a voice above him, casual as death. "Tell Gorshkov we have his precious Gallo. If he wants them breathing, he comes alone." Laughter. The van door slammed. Darkness swallowed everything, and Antonino Gallo, 10 years old, realized that courage only gets you so far. Sometimes, it just gets you taken. Chapter 4. The winery prison consciousness returned like drowning in reverse. Antonino gasped, eyes snapping open to darkness that slowly resolved into shapes. Rotting barrels, cracked stone walls, moonlight bleeding through broken windows. The air tasted like mold, and old wine turned to vinegar. His hands were bound behind him. Rope bit into his wrists. "Antonino!" Aunt Penelope's voice, raw from screaming, came from his left. She was tied to a wooden pillar, face bruised, tears cutting tracks through dust on her cheeks. Alive. Still alive. Relief lasted 3 seconds. Then the door crashed open. 3 men entered. No masks now, faces hard as the stone walls. The leader wore an expensive suit stained with Antonino's blood from the bite. He smiled, but it was the smile of something that had forgotten how to be human. "The little Gallo wakes up." He crouched in front of Antonino. "You know what Gorshkov is planning, where he keeps his ledgers, his safe houses." Each word punctuated with certainty. "Your father told you before he vanished. That's how these bloodlines work. Secrets passed down like heirlooms." "I don't know anything," Antonino gasped. "I'm just a kid. I don't—" A slap cracked across his face. Stars burst behind his eyes. "Don't lie to me." The man's voice went cold. "Your father sang like a canary before we locked him away. Gallo loyalty died begging. You think he's some hero? He broke. They all break." "No." Antonino's voice shattered. "Papa wouldn't—" But doubt crept in like poison. 5 years of silence. 5 years of abandonment. What if they were right? What if his father had been weak, had betrayed everyone, had left Antonino with nothing but a cursed name? Fear. Grief. Confusion crashed together until Antonino couldn't breathe. Enough. The leader pulled out a phone. "You're going to call Gorshkov. Tell him where you are. Beg him to come save you." He thrust it into Antonino's bound hands. "And to prove you're alive." He arranged Antonino beside a wine barrel, positioning Penelope in frame. "Smile for the camera." The flash blinded. Antonino's mind raced through panic. Papa's voice echoed from years ago. "If you're ever in real danger, leave me a message only we understand." The sugar packet game. Cafes, secret codes spelled in white paper squares. His eyes darted around the room. There, scattered on a rusted table, sugar packets from whatever coffee they'd been drinking. "Make the call," the man demanded, reviewing the photo. Antonino's hands shook as he reached toward the table. "Can I— water, please? My throat—" "Fine, quick." Antonino grabbed the water bottle and palmed 4 sugar packets. While they focused on the phone, he arranged them on the barrel's edge behind him. Casual. Invisible. TRAP. The photo was already taken. The packets sat in frame. The kidnappers never looked twice. "Now," the leader growled. "Call him." 005. Roland moves. The photo arrived at 2:47 a.m. Roland Gorshkov stared at his phone screen in the war room of his private estate. Antonino's terrified face, Penelope's bruises, the abandoned winery's crumbling walls behind them. His advisors crowded around, voices rising in controlled urgency. "It's bait, obviously," Marco said, pointing at the image. "They want you isolated. The moment you go alone, you're dead. We should send a team, negotiate, buy time." "No negotiations." Roland's voice was granite. His eyes hadn't left the screen. Something nagged at him, a detail his instincts screamed to notice. Then he saw it. 4 white squares on the barrel's edge. Sugar packets, arranged in a specific pattern. His breath caught. TRAP. "Matteo," he whispered. "What?" Roland zoomed in, heart pounding. Matteo used to leave coded messages in cafes, sugar packets, napkins, whatever was available. He taught his son. His jaw tightened, something breaking behind his carefully maintained armor. "The boy is warning me." even terrified, tied up, 10 years old. He's warning me. Then we definitely don't go. We go. Roland's voice cut through the room like a blade. I go, because a real Gallo doesn't just warn you. He trusts you'll be smart enough to answer. He stood, the weight of an old debt settling on his shoulders. Matteo saved my life when he didn't have to. Took a bullet meant for my heart, and I let his family suffer for 5 years thinking I'd failed them. His voice cracked, rare emotion bleeding through. I won't fail his son. Roland. Prepare a team, 6 men, the ones who owe me blood debts, not money. Loyal soldiers only. His eyes hardened back into the Mafia, king the world feared. We hit them fast, we hit them silent, and we bring that boy home. Meanwhile, in the winery, Antonino pressed closer to Aunt Penelope in the darkness, her shallow breathing the only sound besides distant voices of their captors. I'm scared, he whispered. I know, tesoro. Her voice trembled. Me too. Papa used to say fear is just proof you're still alive. Penelope's breath hitched. Your father said that. Every time I had nightmares. Antonino swallowed hard, trying to channel courage he didn't feel. He said being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means choosing to stand anyway. You're so much like him. Tears rolled down her cheeks. So much. Antonino squeezed her bound hands with his own. Roland will come. I sent him a message. How Papa taught me. A small, broken smile. He taught me everything. Outside, engines rumbled in the distance. Antonino closed his eyes and prayed his message had been enough. The voices drifted through the winery's broken walls like ghosts discussing the living. Antonino pressed his ear against the gap in the floorboards, listening to his captors celebrate in the adjacent room. Penelope had finally fallen into exhausted sleep beside him, but Antonino couldn't rest. Wouldn't. Gorshkov will come, one voice said, thick with confidence. He's sentimental about the gallows. Always has been. Should have finished Matteo when we had the chance. Another voice, darker, but keeping him alive had its uses. Bait for Roland, insurance against the other families. Antonino's heart stopped. Keeping him alive. Roland thinks he killed Matteo himself, that warehouse fire 5 years ago. Beautiful lie. Laughter, cruel and cold. The great Gorshkov, carrying guilt for a murder he didn't commit while we kept Matteo rotting in chains. Tomorrow, we erase the bloodline for real. Father and son, together in death. The world tilted sideways. Papa was alive. Then, a sound. Faint. Below, a muffled groan, barely human, coming from beneath the floorboards. Antonino's pulse roared. The captors were distracted, arguing about positions for Roland's arrival. The ropes on his wrists had loosened from hours of twisting. Papa's old trick, make your hands small, work the knots. One final pull. The rope gave. Antonino moved like a shadow, crawling toward the corner where stone stairs descended into darkness. Every muscle screamed run away, but he moved toward the sound instead. The cellar smelled like death and despair. His eyes adjusted slowly, ancient wine racks, shattered bottles, and in the corner, a figure slumped against the wall. Shackled. Skeletal. More ghost than man, but the eyes that lifted to meet his were unmistakable. Antonino. The voice was ruined, broken glass and raw hope. My lion. Time shattered. Papa? Antonino stumbled forward, fell to his knees. His father, impossibly thin, beard matted with grime, scars crossing his face like a map of suffering, reached out with trembling, chained hands. You're real, Matteo Gallo whispered, tears cutting through 5 years of dirt. You're alive, you're... His voice broke. You shouldn't be here. Not here. Not in this hell. They said you betrayed everyone. Antonino's words tumbled out between sobs. That Roland killed you, that you abandoned us. Never. Matteo's hands found Antonino's face, gentle despite the chains. Falsely accused, framed by traitors in Roland's own circle. They locked me here, kept me alive as leverage, made everyone believe I was dead. His eyes, sunken but fierce, bore into his son's. I never stopped fighting to get back to you. I won't leave you, Antonino said, voice steel through tears. I won't. Above them, an explosion shattered the night. Gunfire erupted like thunder. Roland had arrived. The world above exploded into violence. Gunfire cracked like lightning, sharp, percussive, deadly. Men shouted, barrels crashed, footsteps thundered across ancient floorboards as Roland's assault team tore through the winery like a surgical blade. Downstairs, the boy. More shots. A scream cut short. Antonino yanked desperately at his father's chains, hands slick with sweat and panic. The shackles were old iron, bolted into stone. Impossible. Leave me, Matteo rasped. Go to Roland. Get out. No. Antonino pulled harder, fingernails splitting. I'm not losing you again. The cellar door slammed open. A captor stumbled down the stairs, blood staining his shoulder, gun raised with shaking hands. His eyes went wild when he saw Matteo. You... Madness and desperation twisted his face. You're the reason this all went wrong. Should have killed you years ago. The gun swung toward Matteo. Time crystallized. Antonino didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't feel fear, only the primal, absolute need to protect the man who'd been stolen from him. He threw himself between the barrel and his father, arms spread wide, body small but defiant, eyes locked on the gunman. You'll have to go through me first. His voice didn't shake. Every lesson his father ever taught him, every moment of courage he'd built since the tearoom, crystallized into this single act of impossible bravery. The gunman's hand trembled. Stupid boy! Roland! Antonino's scream tore from his lungs, raw and desperate. Down here, now! Thunder on the stairs. Roland Gorshkov burst into the cellar like vengeance incarnate. Gun raised, eyes blazing, flanked by two of his men. He fired once. The captor dropped. Silence crashed down. Roland's eyes swept the room, found Antonino standing guard, then followed his gaze to the figure chained in shadow. Time stopped. The gun slipped from Roland's hand, clattering on stone. No, he breathed. You're dead. I carried your body. Matteo Gallo lifted his head, chains rattling. His voice was gravel and grief. You carried an empty coffin, brother. Roland staggered forward, face draining of color. Matteo. Their eyes locked, 5 years of guilt, betrayal, and brotherhood colliding in a single moment. Roland fell to his knees before his old friend, powerful hands reaching out to touch Matteo's face as if confirming reality. They told me you burned, Roland whispered, voice breaking. I mourned you. I failed you. You didn't fail me. Matteo's chained hand gripped Roland's. You saved my son. Above them, the last of the gunfire faded, and in the cellar, two brothers, forged in blood and broken by lies, finally found each other again. Who did this to you? Roland's voice was barely controlled fury. Who framed you? Who kept you here? Matteo's eyes, hollow from years of darkness, fixed on something behind Roland. His jaw tightened. Your most trusted advisor, the man who stood beside you for 15 years? No. Roland shook his head. Not. Marco Tessari. The name fell like a guillotine blade. Roland's face went white. Marco has been with me since before he needed you dead, Matteo said quietly. But you were too protected, too loved. So he eliminated the one man who could see through him. Me. Footsteps echoed on the cellar stairs. Boss? Marco's voice called down, smooth and concerned. We've secured the perimeter. The boy... He appeared in the doorway and froze. His eyes locked on Matteo. Color drained from his face. Then his hand moved to his holster. "You should have stayed dead," Marco whispered, gun rising. Roland stood slowly, positioning himself between Marco and the gallows. "Put it down, Marco." "You don't understand." Marco's voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. He knew too much. About the shipments I was skimming, the deals I made with the Russians. He was going to expose me, destroy everything I built. So you destroyed him instead. Roland's voice was ice over lava. Made me believe I'd killed my own brother. Let me carry that guilt for 5 years. It was business. Marco's gun hand shook. Just business. Nothing personal. You chained me like an animal, Matteo said, standing despite his weakness. Antonino gripped his father's arm, keeping him upright. You took 5 years of my son's childhood. You killed my honor. You stole my life. I had no choice. There's always a choice. Roland took a step forward. You chose greed over loyalty, fear over honor. Marco's finger moved to the trigger. I won't go down. Roland's men moved like shadows. 2 simultaneous shots rang out. Marco's gun flew from his hand. He stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. Roland closed the distance in 3 strides. 1 punch, precise, devastating. Marco crashed to the stone floor, blood streaming from his nose. Roland stood over him, the king reclaiming his throne from the serpent who'd poisoned it. You're already down, Roland said quietly. You've been falling for 5 years. I just didn't see it. He turned his back on Marco. The ultimate dismissal. Get him out of my sight. Roland's men dragged the traitor away, his protests fading into the night. In the cellar's silence, only truth remained. The cellar fell quiet, the kind of silence that follows storms, heavy with aftermath and promise. Roland's locksmith worked the ancient shackles with careful precision. Metal groaned, then click. The chains fell away. Matteo Gallo collapsed forward into his son's arms. Antonino caught him, impossibly light, impossibly real. 5 years of wondering, hoping, mourning, and here he was, breathing, alive, home. The dam broke. Antonino sobbed, great, shaking gasps that tore from his chest like they'd been buried there since he was 5 years old. All the fear from the tea room, the terror of the kidnapping, the weight of standing between his father and a gun. It crashed over him in waves. I thought you left us, he choked out. I thought you didn't want... Never! Matteo's ruined voice was fierce. Every single day I fought to get back to you. Every single day. Roland's hand settled on Antonino's shoulder, heavy, protective, final. From this day forward, he said, voice carrying the weight of blood oath, no one touches Gallo blood. Not while I draw breath. His eyes lifted to Matteo. Old debts must be repaid, brother. The families that did this will answer. The war begins at dawn. Matteo nodded, strength returning to his hollow frame. The gallows stand with you. No. Roland's grip on Antonino tightened slightly. The gallows stand beside me, as equals, as they always should have. Antonino looked between them. 2 legends, 2 survivors, forging something new from the ashes of betrayal. Papa. His voice was small again, 10 years old again. Am I strong enough for what comes next? Matteo cupped his son's face with both hands, tears cutting through the grime. You already proved it, my lion. Strength is not violence, it's choice. His eyes shone with fierce pride. You chose to save a stranger, chose to warn Roland, chose to stand between me and death. That's the strength empires are built on. Aunt Penelope appeared in the doorway, freed by Roland's men, and ran to them. The 3 gallows, embraced, broken, bloodied, but undefeated. Above them, through the shattered window, dawn painted the Sicilian sky in gold and crimson. Antonino looked at that sunrise and understood. He'd entered the tea room as a child, doing homework. He left this cellar as something else entirely. A Gallo, a witness, a keeper of dangerous truths, the first step from innocence toward legacy. Roland raised a weathered flask, ancient ritual, blood and wine. To the gallows, may your enemies never rest. Matteo's voice joined his, and may your friends never forget. A dynasty reignited, forged in courage, tea and blood.